let's go back and then we'll bring it back. I mean, I think, let me just check on the time. That's good. So we still have some time. So I'm going to take another 5 hands and then we'll bring it back to the panel to wrap up. So 1, 2, 3, space for 2 more. 4, you must be with it. Okay, I'm going to seal it. Okay, go ahead.
I'm not so sure this is as much.
Could you speak up, please, though?
I'm not so sure this is as much a question as it is a comment, and feel free to shoot me in the foot if it's inappropriate. However, as much as we feel we may need a third party, and I'm certainly not arguing with you as to that, I don't think we can sit and wait in a box in the basement for someone to take the lid off and let us come up and say, here we are. There are other ways to be effective. And if you look at Dennis Kucinich, Dennis is way out there. And don't go to his district and try and get rid of him. I don't care what you call him. You could call him a yellow, yellow giraffe, and his voters would still keep voting for him. And the reason they keep voting for him is that everybody in the district has been dragged down to a Democratic committee meeting at least once by some friend, some neighbor, some preacher, some drunk who was rescued by someone there. But the way Dennis reaches is, I reach over to this total stranger that I met in a coffee bar, and I say, have you heard? We have child care after the school, so we don't have to work part-time, etc., etc., etc. If you show up at the committee meetings, and you show up often enough, and you show up with enough weird balls, they're going to start thinking weird just like we do. Okay? I mean, these are the people that are going to vote for him. So you're going to twist people left without them seeing it. You may then capture them as a third party, and maybe you'll be more effective before I am, but if I just sit there and do nothing, they're going to win.
You kind of addressing that to me, and I'd like to respond.
Let's go with the 5. And
all right, go
so
ahead.
hold them, and this is good. And one thing I'll just remind us of, I mean, I didn't necessarily predict that we would get into, I didn't expect that we would get into a discussion about electoral political strategy when putting this together. And I'll remind us that the U.S. Social Forum is part of the International Social Forum phenomenon, which is expressly nonpartisan. So this is an important conversation. It's actually a very friendly conversation, an important conversation to have. But let's also focus on where there are the places of unity that we can build on too. That's sort of the guide there that I think you were next.
I'm Jackie Cabasso from Western States Legal Foundation, and I'm very struck by what Kevin Zeese is saying, and I'm very intrigued with that analysis. But I want to broaden it actually beyond just the electoral process, because I think this is a malaise that is affecting our politics, small p, writ large, which I was reflecting on earlier this morning on a real decline in sort of the commitment of speaking truth to power. And a real trend towards asking for what we think we can get. And I think that has profoundly corrupted our own political effectiveness and really marginalized us. And I think this started happening in a big way under the Clinton administration, when a lot of people who were outside went inside and got government jobs, and they got what I call the access disease. And then it's been further enhanced by the attitudes of the funding community, which also wants to get what's winnable and incremental and so on and so forth. And so I find myself, with a primary focus on nuclear weapons abolition, having to be independent of the arms control and disarmament community, the official one, the inside the Beltway one, which is being silent on conditioning ratification of the START Treaty on a $180 billion spending plan for nuclear weapons over the next 10 years. So, and I want to share in that regard a success story, which is that I also work with Mayors for Peace, and to bring in the importance of and possibility of local democracy in action, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, which is the association of cities with populations over 30,000, last week in Oklahoma City unanimously adopted a resolution for nuclear abolition, but specifically calling for ratification of the New START treaty without conditions, and calling for termination of all funding for nuclear weapons modernization, deep reduction in nuclear weapons spending to below Cold War levels, and redirecting those funds to meet the needs of cities. And that wasn't challenged. It was unanimously adopted. So that's an opening for more work on the local level to connect, military spending with local needs and so on. So I just want to endorse that idea of independence, not just in electoral politics, but in all of our politics.
Thank you.
My name is Mark Welsh, and I'm the Omaha coordinator for Nebraskans for Peace. We're the oldest continuously operating peace and justice organization that's statewide in the United States. We just celebrated our 40th anniversary. And a couple of things for you to talk about, hopefully, is the cost of war is bankrupting our country. And I'm just wondering, how long do you think it's going to take before this simple financial question is going to force our leaders in Congress and the presidency to stop this madness? And another thing that our group is, we're interested in a lot of different issues and working on many, but to prevent an arms race in outer space, you see this is an important issue since the United States and Israel are the only countries in the world that have voted against that in the UN. I'd just like to hear your thoughts on those two things.
Good. And one over here, and then have you raised your hand in the back there? Sure. Okay, so Wayne, you the fifth. Go ahead.
The presidential debates are a corporate sham. What is an effective strategy for an open presidential debate?
And then last question or comment?
I guess my question was concerning Acorn and APAC. Acorn was recently destroyed. They raised, I think, 2 million votes for Obama, and I think that's why they were destroyed. I have a lot of disagreements with APAC, but I have this guilt because I have this deep admiration for the way they get things done. And I don't get it. It's actually, this is a question because I don't have any answers. I thought we were the many and they were the few, but yet Rahm Emanuel could say what he said. We could disregard the left. And if we're the many, and I'm a little puzzled now. Maybe we're not the many. I look at truck drivers. I travel across the country. They stop. There's Fox News on every single truck stop, every bank I go into, and I don't get it. It's if AIPAC can make all 3 Democratic candidates, Hillary, Obama, and McCain, the Republican candidate, come before them just before the election, bow on camera, and they're the few. Why is it that the left, when I say the left, it encompasses all of us, why can't we even get them to take notice? And that's a question for the panel.
Well, that's a great way to end, and I'm going to just say that I'm going to give a response to that, which is they have guns. Okay? So that's my response. We're the many, and we are unarmed, frankly, and that's part of why this discussion is, I think, important. I also want to say Jackie's comments reminded me, that we co-organized a conference in Madison last year, Future Cities 2009, which was about using local democracy to move to a post-nuclear world, right? And building building on the ties between different types of work, but all focused on that D question, not the small p, but the small d. How do we build genuine democracy in this country? How do we actually exercise power? So, with that note, if you're interested in those questions, I will again invite you to come back to Madison if you've been there before for the Democracy Convention in late August of 2011. Okay, we're starting early. Late August of 2011, the 24th through the 28th. You can actually register now. The website is up, democracyconvention.org, and you'll be hearing more about it in the coming days and weeks. So who would like to start with wrapping up here? We got lots of folks. Why don't we start at the end and move this way? Why don't we do that?
I just want to finish one thing off here, okay? All my life I've seen our country go backwards. All my life. And don't even get me going in terms of the black community where I come from. The two-party system does not work. It ain't about Dennis. You know, Feingold's a good friend. Got some good people in there. But that's not what it's about. It's about progress for the American people, and that has not been happening. I remind you that the Republican Party was a third party at one time. So don't deny the third party development in this country. And it's got to happen so that there can be a better mix in terms of what happens in Congress and how we are represented. But I think that's real important to understand that and to allow it to happen and to allow other people into debates and to change how the money works. All that's so important. It's not going to change until that happens. Thanks.
I think that Jackie's comments on the mayor's success is very, very important. I think another success worth mentioning is that, AIPAC or not, the blockade is opening because some people on some ships, unlike everyone who dies in wars, did not die in vain. And there is some success there. I was Acorn's communications person for 3 years, the only one they ever had, and I wish that I had been there still when they were attacked, not because I could have possibly done anything to save them, but because I could have gone down fighting with the rest of them. And I think that they went down because of the media. Because of the corporate media, as punishment for registering poor people to vote, and I think that this is a media question. I spoke a couple days ago with a guy named David Siegel, who's running for Congress in Rhode Island, and he said, if I get into Congress, I'm going to vote against every dollar for every war ever. And I said, Mr. Siegel, if they threaten you and bribe you the way they do, they meaning Rahm and Manski, the way that they do everybody who's there now, what will you do about it? And he said, well, here's what I did in Rhode Island. We built a progressive caucus that actually funds our progressive incumbents so that when the party leadership goes against them for doing what the people want, they've still got money. And I went and I've been talking to Congressman Grayson's office, who raises more money by doing what people want, the party be damned, than anybody else. And I said, you got to figure out a way to do this in a group so that there is funding there to because Kevin's exactly right. We have a so-called progressive caucus that has never once stood for a goddamn thing. It's just membership, no duties required. And yet David Siegel, who used to be a Green and is now a Democrat, under the understanding of millions of people around this country, I ought to oppose him because he's a Democrat. I ought not to fight to get somebody into Congress who might take a stand for us the way nobody ever has because he's a Democrat. I think that this war economy, that the war economy is what's destroying the rest of the economy, but I don't think that there's any point where you reach where that automatically means that they turn against the madness. I think more likely they just kill us all. And I think that keeping the weapons out of space is incredibly important. I think the work that the Global Network Against Weapons in Space does is incredibly important, and I think that we have to keep up all of those fights.
Well, the topic is who decides about war, and we've gotten off on who decides about anything, and it's all boils down to the same thing. It's money. Yeah. Money decides everything in our country, and so every time I have these conversations with people, I end up with the same thing. And third parties. Well, we'll never get third parties elected until we do campaign finance reform, or we have some other kind of electoral method. AIPAC is so powerful because they have so much money, and people need the money to get reelected. We've spent $1 trillion on the 2 wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and President Obama has frozen our budget for next year for everything except defense.
Don't call it
aggression.
War.
Right?
Weapons and war.
Well, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Militarism,
Yeah.
which includes giving money to the $3 billion for Israel, and so. And why aren't people more outraged about that? Well, the media controls, the corporate media controls what we see, and they instill this fear in us that they want to kill us, and we got to get them first because So it's all this big bundle of things that are all interconnected, and it all boils down to money. And it's
Thank you.
When you do your conference on democratizing democracy in America, I hope you focus on a strong section on democratizing the economy.
Yes.
I put more time on that working through our group prosperityagenda.us than anything else these days, actually. I think that is the key. And it's also the key to your question about the debates. Those debates right now are run by a commission that's headed by 2 former heads of the Democratic Party and funded by corporations. It's a corporate duopoly fraud, and it was put in place because Ross Perot got into debates when the League of Women Voters ran the debates, and they said, just after, no, Ross Perot got in with the League of Women Voters, and after that happened, no more of that. And so the end of real debates is a big problem, because that's when most people are listening. And so that's just one example of many, the need to democratize our economy in order to democratize our politics. I just want to finish on your point, because that's, when I brought up the issue of independent electoral activity, I said the key word was independent. And I started with the media, independent movements, then I said independent electoral. And I mentioned I focused on electoral because I knew that would be the area we'd have most disagreement. And I think among people who agree on almost everything else, we might as well disagree on some stuff and debate it so we can hear each other's views. And so I thought that was why I focused on electoral, because I thought I knew we'd have disagreement there. On independent movements, I saw this year in the single-payer, the healthcare reform, so-called reform effort. The group that sided with the Democratic Party, HCAN, the real single-payer group is Healthcare Now, HCN. They picked the name HCAN, and they've spent tens of millions of dollars, $40 to $60 million, essentially supporting an insurance bailout. I look at the climate change debate, and I see the environmental groups supporting cap and trade, which is a ripoff. It's going to make a lot of people wealthy but not solve the problem. In fact, a lot of these foundations who are supporting cap and trade will probably make a lot of money off of cap and trade, trading in the caps. And so independent movements are critical. And so I see that as one of the biggest problems we have is people on the left are often fooled by false leadership of non-independent movements. Often inside the Beltway, not completely inside the Beltway. And not everybody inside the Beltway is sold off. But these phony movements that really are not independent, that are just mouthpieces for the Democratic Party these days, and the Republicans are probably mouthpieces of the Republican Party, but right now mouthpieces of the Democratic Party are one of the biggest problems we face. And but I do think that the key term on all these issues that we face is independent. We need independence in our media, which we don't have, independence in our movements, which we don't have, independence in our politics, we don't have. And the second big word, of course, is democratization. We need that in our economy, our politics, our media, all that needs to be democratized as well. So those are the two things, independent democratization. If we achieve those, we'll have the kind of the different world we're seeking. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thanks to our panelists. Thanks to Jonathan and Sarah for participating. And look forward to seeing everybody here the next couple of days.
Could I announce a 3 o'clock event?
All right, so we've been announced for a 3 o'clock event, which is right now.
In 4 minutes, in front of the steps in front of the building, there's a press conference related to opposing war, followed by a march right down Jefferson Street to meet at the Joe Louis statue. Thank you, Zul. And then we're going to march to a military recruiter's office, and it would be very helpful if you all came.
Thank you.
Good job.